Good afternoon. I first want to thank you for being here and being a part of this. I'm State Representative Blaine Wilhour from the 107th District. I'm here with my colleague Adam Niemerg, State Representative, and State Senator Darren Bailey. We're here today to respond to the governor's just released changes to the mask mandates in the state of Illinois, specifically the phase out of the mandates in the public, but not in the education system at this time. And what we witnessed today is what it looks like when you allow a politician unchecked power over the people of the Illinois for the past 2 years. We see a governor that believes he has the absolute power and the security to do whatever the hell he wants without regard to facts, the data, common sense, statutory authority, the Constitution, or even rulings of the court here in the state of Illinois. This governor has 2 years worth of experience that he and his unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats can inflict any unlawful decree on the citizens of this state without any accountability, because they have a media and a bipartisan political class that has stood by and allowed it. For the last year, at least, I contend 2 years, the observed science, scores of studies, real-world observations have told us there is absolutely no observed or clinical data that indicates any benefit whatsoever to masking K through 12 students in schools. But as parents, we can all observe the harms that this nonsensical policy has brought us. Young kids being forced to cover their faces, schools and parents being threatened, coerced, put in impossible situations, forced to comply with mandates that they know intuitively is nonsense, impractical, a hindrance to proper education, and not in the best interest of the kids. I'm a parent to 3 grade school boys in South Central Illinois. I've gone to basketball games. I've witnessed the ridiculous chin straps that they've got going on there. And if you have kids and if you've watched this games, you know what I'm talking about. They do this just to signal compliance. What kind of message does that send to our kids? What kind of precedent are we setting for the future doing this kind of stuff? I've witnessed my first grader struggle with his phonics because he couldn't see his teacher's face. My wife and I have felt forced to flee public education because common sense and our kids' best interest wasn't the top priority there. Too many others don't have that option. The science and the observations, they just really haven't changed all that much since the summer of 2020. What has changed is the politics. Parents in this state and across the country, they've had enough. They're standing up in droves. And, you know, this is the dilemma that you get when you have a governor, when you have the Illinois Department of Public Health, when you have the Illinois State Board of Education, and much of the established media have staked every bit of their personal, professional, and political credibility on this narrative of fear, compliance, and politics. You get this dangerous situation where politically, this governor, he couldn't turn back if he wanted to, in spite of all of the evidence, the pressure from parents, the knowledge of the best interests of kids. It's all because of politics, and that's wrong. Political science says that Governor Pritzker can't take this loss, because a loss would be acknowledging that what he has put small business owners through, what he has put kids through for the last 2 years has been for nothing. So our message to parents, to school boards and administrators is to continue to rise up, continue to make your voices heard, and demand a normal school experience for your children, the experience that they deserve, in spite of what any lawless decrees that come from this governor. You have that right, you have that responsibility, and this group of legislators, we're a small handful of the people that has took the bullets on this over the past 2 years advocating for this, and we certainly have your backs after today. Thank you, and I want to introduce my colleague, State Representative Adam Niemerg.
Thank you, Representative Wilhour. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. My name is Adam Niemerg. I represent the 109th District, all the parts of 9 counties in Southeast Illinois. And I come to you today as a state representative, but also a father. I have a preschooler. My daughter is 3 years old, and my son, he's in 1st grade. He's 6, almost 7. So I come to you as a father as well as a state representative. Early on, the governor used fear of the unknown to keep folks compliant, shutting down schools and closing businesses. But it did not take long to see what was really happening. Here in Illinois, a political narrative is driving these COVID mitigations. We've seen our freedoms taken away for so-called security. Many of you brought your child to school, scrambled to find that mask, placed it on your child's face, and watch them walk into school, knowing it was wrong, but feeling helpless to do anything about it. I speak with many students throughout my district, and there's a common, reoccurring question that they asked. I actually had a group of 4th graders ask me this question: when can we take our masks off? It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see these young children ask those questions and to know the truth, that it's all done for a political agenda. And as a parent, I take this personally. We know children are least susceptible to COVID, that the rate of hospitalization is low. We know that other states and countries are not mandating masks for their children, yet the governor, the IDPH, the Illinois State Board of Education, and the Democrats here in Springfield have done nothing. Failure will be the legacy of this administration. Over the past year, I've asked for data, and it was given to me piecemeal. I asked on the record for hospitalization rates, and I was told I would have it in 2 days. It took 4 weeks just to get a portion of that data. At every turn, at every ask, at every question, I was turned away. You were turned away. Now we see clear legal precedent is set. A precedent we all knew existed long before, yet very few were willing to act. A precedent which grants all schools the legal standing to say enough is enough. Now we see school teachers facing termination, students suspended from school, and parents being told no change is possible. It is unacceptable and must stop. Now the governor tells us he will rescind his statewide mask mandate based on the so-called science. Yet he will not leave his political narrative for schools. He will not admit he was incorrect in masking our children for so long. He will not let go of this political narrative, a political narrative that has harmed a generation. Parents' rights matter, no matter what this governor says. Thank you. And I introduce my colleague, Senator Darren Bailey.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for coming out here today. We're in a fight for our freedoms, and we're in a fight for the future of Illinois. Working families, our students, they need relief, and they need an advocate fighting for them. I applaud and stand with the many parents, students, teachers across the state standing up and demanding an end to the forced unilateral mandates and return to local control, which I've been calling for since day one. But unfortunately, Governor Pritzker has again put his political agenda in front of what we know to be in the best interests of our students and their education. Governor Pritzker is fighting in court to force masks on your school children. This unilateral move, without engaging the legislator, does not make him a leader. It makes him a tyrant. And his inability to stand up to the woke mobs and special interest groups, it makes him a coward. It's time to stop this nonsense and end the mandates today. Defending freedom and protecting our kids shouldn't be issues that you need to poll before standing up and doing something about it. I will continue fighting for our freedom and common sense policies. As parents, your freedom to make the best decisions for you and your family matter. As students, your education and your mental health matter. After seeing what Governor Pritzker has done to our students, businesses, churches, and people since he has taken office, I want to ask you a very simple question. Years from now, when your children and your grandchildren ask where you stood when their freedom was on the chopping block, what will you be able to tell them? I know what I'm going to tell my children and grandchildren. I'm going to be able to tell them that I fought for their rights, their mental health, and their freedoms, and I did absolutely everything that I could do to ensure that parents and students had access to the best educational options available. Friends, we can't sit back and let one person who has never stepped foot in most school districts across our state pretend that he knows what is best for your kids and our schools. Parents, teachers, elected school board members should be making these decisions right now locally. It's time to end the mandates and provide our children with the education that they deserve. One where masks are optional and possibilities are endless. Where parents choose the best school for their children and their involvement is encouraged. It's time to stand up to the special interests, eliminate the mandates, remove the woke policies from classrooms, and restore the P to PTA. Parents, we are fighting to end this nonsense and give you the choice that you and your children deserve. Thank you so much for your time. God bless every parent, student, and teacher fighting and dealing with this nonsense, and God bless this great state of Illinois. Thank you.
Do you believe that President Trump was right when he said it was unvaccinated people who were driving the rush of Delta and Omicron infections and hospitalizations?
Ask me that again.
Do you believe President Trump when he said it was unvaccinated patients who were driving hospitalizations and deaths, and that vaccinations save lives?
I do not agree with that. So I think that vaccinations, if you want to be vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you need to wear a mask, wear a mask. But if you don't, you should have the freedom to be able to do what it is that you want to do. That's what this country stands for. That's what we stand for. Those were in the early days of this. There was a lot of confusion and a lot of questions and a lot of concerns going on.
Then how do you explain the difference in Illinois' death rate and the COVID rate? We did much better than other states in the Midwest on hospitalizations and on mortality rates from August until now, or from the start of 2021 until now, since vaccines have been available. How do you explain that?
I disagree with that. I see that. Well, the numbers are real.
I think also, Mark, you could. I think that you could also turn that question around. How do you explain what's happening in Florida and Texas and some of these other states that have just as good or better numbers than the state of Illinois do, where they have more freedom, they have more choices, and they have. It's either very close, or they're in a better situation overall. Their economies are in a better situation. Yes, Mark, they are. Their economies are in a better situation. They're faring this pandemic as well or better than everybody else, and they have prioritized freedom, they've prioritized quality of life, and they've prioritized doing protections towards the people that are actually vulnerable to becoming sick and dying. Nobody's saying that, Mark. I don't know what you're getting at there.
Senator Bailey, what science do you believe in? Because the wire points graph you have there and parental rights are not science.
I believe in proof. I think there's a big misunderstanding to what science is. As Representative Niemerg alluded to, for the last 2 years, as I've sat and listened to IDPH and sat in on these conferences and told, we have proof that we need to start shutting restaurants down. I too asked for that proof, and I actually never received much of what I asked for. So as I've said from day one, your science, my science, I don't know. But what I do know is that proof. The states all around us, those states that don't have mandates, they're flourishing and they're doing just fine.
Which experts are you working with, though? Are you working with scientists like the governor?
As it stands right now, the court order is still in place, the appeal has not been granted. What message should school districts take away with that?
School districts, I've been saying this from day one, need to be standing up. Local units of government are in control. Local units of government have been elected to represent their people, and it is only because of the fear that Governor Pritzker has instilled over 2 years of messaging that has cowered people back. Endless, mindless threats of, I'm going to take your funding away, I'm going to, revoke the charters. It's fear that's driving what's going on, and that's got to stop.
What message does it send with the governor saying it was a, quote, downstate judge, just one judge with a poorly written decision?
Well, I think it's massively hypocritical of the governor to talk about one person making a decision when he's been a one-man rule for the last 20 months. And when we look at the actual numbers when it comes to hospitalization of our youth proportionately, I discussed the IDPH data that was supposedly going to be supplied to me. And based on what I could gather and expedite myself, hospitalization rates were 0.004%. And I've sat down in multiple committee meetings with the IDPH and asked them, are children more susceptible to COVID now than they've ever been before? And the answer was always no. So let's not lose track of why we're in this room today. We're in this room today because school-age children, preschoolers, first graders, second graders have never seen a face before, can't practice phonics, are still required to wear masks in schools, and it has to stop now. And the message that they should take away from this, from that ruling, from the TRO, is at the bottom of it, where the judge was very clear in saying that the ISB, IDPH, and the governor's emergency orders are null and void, and every school, even if they're not named as a plaintiff, should govern themselves accordingly.
IDPH data shows that there's 2,700 more excess deaths outside of COVID deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds. What do you guys think is driving that? We have yet to see the 2021 data on breakdowns of causes of death.
Well, I'm deeply concerned that it's due to the mental deterioration of our children as being isolated as a result of COVID-19 and the COVID mitigations here in the state of Illinois. We're going to see suicides on the rise. We see students in the corners that are too afraid to engage their other students. This lack of being able to see a teacher's face, this lack of interaction amongst these children, it's going to be detrimental for an entire generation. And it didn't have to happen. It didn't have to happen. We see other states that have done it differently. They've done it successfully. We've seen other countries that have done it differently, done it successfully. And here in Illinois, the governor, the IDPH, ISB have all failed our students.
Representative, to be clear, the question was, what do you think is leading to these excess deaths? Do you think then that your answer about suicides, is that what's leading to these excess deaths?
Well, as Greg alluded to, not having the data extrapolated yet to see what the cause of death is, we're just merely having a discussion about that. But we have seen students that have been affected mentally as a result of this. We see it daily. Folks, you see it daily. You see it with your kids when they come from schools. You see it whenever they're at the baseball games. You see it when they're not engaging with other children. And that's what today is about. It's about removing masks in schools and having a practical COVID mitigation strategy set in place.
Region 5 has some of the worst ICU numbers in the state, with only 3 open ICU beds last night, which is 96% full. Some of those counties have the lowest vaccination rate or numbers in the state. So should people in southern Illinois keep their masks on to bring those numbers down?
That's going to be a decision for every individual to make. We've seen other countries, we've seen other states that have recently announced that COVID mitigation standards are going to be more in your hands as a person, as an individual, as a citizen, as a parent, as myself, as a father of 2 children. It's up to me whether my children are masked or not the government.
If you want to, and you know, this is another key case of not dealing with the root cause of the problem. We can talk about vaccinations, we can talk about all that stuff in Region 5, but the fact is, hospital capacity in the state of Illinois is less than it was when we started this in 2020, and I think you can attribute a lot of that to these unreasonable mitigations that's been put forward by the governor that's driving staff away from these hospitals. So if we want to really deal with that issue, we need to deal with the issue that's driving away people, especially nurses and nurses and stuff that have pre-existing immunity. So you know, deal with that issue before you deal with the overall. And the thought that some politician should be out here giving personal medical advice to people in general without any knowledge of their personal medical situation goes against everything the you know, medical ethics has ever been about. I've never understood the longing for everybody for some politician to just give medical advice about a medical procedure to people with no knowledge of their personal situation.
It's not just the politicians, it's actually the hospitals and the doctors and the medical experts who are saying it is the crush of unvaccinated patients coming into their hospitals that's reducing their capacity.
We can, you know, Mark, you can get doctors and people to say the opposite stuff here. But what we're here talking about today, what you seem to be completely ignoring, what the media seems to be completely ignoring, is the fact that the governor has different mitigation standards for kids in a classroom than he does somebody going to a bar or a casino or anything else. Doesn't the media think that is a big deal, something that we should be talking about, we should be focusing on? Because we all know that if anybody needs to be unmasked, it's the K through 12 kids who have been demonstrated to be at the least risk to critical illness or death. And furthermore, there was all kinds of misinformation that was coming out in the press conference. There is nothing to my knowledge, there's no studies that say the schools, K through 12 schools, are primary drivers of community spread of COVID-19. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Maybe we should be asking questions like that to the governor instead of focusing on all of these other issues. And you know, that's the stuff that we need to be talking about here. That's the stuff that we're talking about. So
Why do you think the Senate President and the House Speaker have not called you guys to address these issues? And have hearings with the doctors?
That's a great question. We would love to have hearings with Dr. Ezike and some of these other decision makers that are putting down these policies. They haven't been made available to the Republican caucus, certainly. And you know, we always said when you're putting these mitigations in place that dramatically alter people's lives and people's livelihoods, overwhelming, over the top transparency is necessary. And we have never ever had this from this government, and this legislature has abdicated its duties completely and let this governor and the bureaucratic state just run amok with this whole situation.